paper title is, as Professor Khan said, Play with Skirts, Dominican, Haitian Dominican Erotics in the Work of Ana Marie Lada's first novel, which I have right here, was published in Ursule's Skirts, the name of the novel. It was published in 2006 by Redbone Press and constitutes a truly unprecedented event in Dominican cultural production. It is at once a story about love and desire, hardship, and work that binds its women protagonists, Miriam and Micaela. It is an extended portrayal of the hardship and cruelty visited upon the poor of the Dominican Republic, and it is an imaginative account of the challenges, violence, and intimacies that shape the cohabitation of Haitians and Dominicans in Hispaniola, Quisqueya, or Haiti. Like much cultural production wrestling with the Haitian-Dominican question, Lada's novel alludes to blackness and African ancestry as a means to thematize race in the Haitian-Dominican case. But I want to put pressure on a few features that make Lada's work distinct and worthy of scholarly attention. And my main argument here is that Lada's centering of the lives, bodies, and desires of black women for one another in this novel are what make this contribution unique, powerful, and a truly decolonizing movida in Chela Salvador's terms. It is a book about love as a decolonizing and disorienting force, one that reorients us towards what Catherine McKittrick has called the new cartographies of struggle created by black women. And I'll tell you a little bit about the plot now. The novel begins by giving us a portrait of two poor communities from which our main characters emerge. Miriam, Dominican of Haitian descent, was born in Ate in the Dominican Sur and moves to the Dominican South, or as some people call it, the Deep South, and moves to Santo Domingo in the aftermath of the death of her parents and in search of a better life. She moves to the city with her compañero Jeremy, a young man from her own community and with whom Miriam has a son, Antonio. After moving to Santo Domingo and due in part to the indignity of life in the capital city, the couple is estranged. One day, and upon her arrival after work, Miriam arrives to find that Jeremy is simply gone. Micaela is born in a poor rural community in San Cristobal and is the daughter of a woman who converts to a fanatical brand of evangelical Christianity and to a curandero father who teaches her the rudiments of popular and Afro-descended religious practices among Dominicans. She's ousted from her parental home by her mother upon the death of her little brother. The two women meet in Santo Domingo when they recognize each other as neighbors and soon enough begin a partnership that threads through what remains of the story. It is important to highlight that as a story of same-sex desire among women, Lada's novel refuses to put labels on what that relationship is and how these women self-identify. They simply are, están together. And I'm thinking here of estar as part of what Rodolfo Kusch, the Argentinian philosopher and anthropologist, calls the American dialectic, and I can talk more about that in Q&A. And the violence that Lada and the characters work through, some of which is horrifically sexual, is not connected in any way to whatever their sexual identities might be. It is telling that at perhaps the most sexually violent moment in the novel, when Miriam is brutally raped after refusing a customer, blackness is at the center of the violence visited upon her. As the customer puts it, quote, "Nobody tells me no, especially not a stupid black puta," unquote. It is telling that this is a moment that happens as Micaela witnesses the beating and rape of her lover, while the two of them are enslaved in a house of prostitution in Puerto Rico. The novel's emphasis on survival does not surface by turning away, but by working through hardship. The novel gives us a hint of the better life that might be available to these women early on by presenting a subplot of one of Micaela's aunts who returns to her small community and tells her about living in Nueva York. But Nueva York is off limits to these women, and Lada's narrative, importantly and smartly, brings them back to the Dominican Republic and cites the possibility of a good life in the space that is perceived as most inhospitable to that prospect. That is the Dominican Ate, where Micaela and Miriam established the Coronado Bodega. Refusing New York City is also importantly about rerouting the couple's desire away from New York and over-determination as a site for alternative sexual identities and cultures. In other words, Doña Miriam and Doña Micaela do not need Judy Garland's rainbows to realize their love. Also, turning away from New York City is about disrupting the narrative of progreso that routes Dominicanidad through that Dominican city, New York, the city where they're at. In other words, muy agradecida, señor Balbuena, pero no. The resignification of the Batey is the first of three features of Ursuline Skirt worth underlining here. Bateys, the settlement communities, once set up for migrant workers in the sugarcane industry, in most locations, as of now, but then, and I think many can probably touch on this, he presents. Today, Bateys represent the poorest and most vulnerable environments for Haitian migrants, Dominicans of Haitian descent, Dominico-Haitianos, and Dominican-born populations. The most typical representations of the Bateys are as spaces for profound indignity and abuse. In Lada's novels, Bateys are precisely what they are elsewhere: seriously under-resourced, vulnerable to different forms of violence, structural and environmental. But Lada is careful to sustain a commitment to this portrayal while also emphasizing the Batey as a site of life, as a place where certain things are possible. After Miriam and Micaela escaped their captors in Puerto Rico, they returned to the Dominican Republic and decided to establish Colmado in Batey. Though they initially experienced a violent and resentful response from the locals who perceived them as witches, the women are ultimately integrated into the life of the community, and they develop a mentorship relationship with a younger woman from the community, Yaida. This particular turn away from the narrative of migrant progress through Nueva York is very rare in Dominican transnational cultures, and it is worth underlining, while I might add it, that the displacements in the novel from the Bateys and small communities to Santo Domingo, to Puerto Rico, and then back to the Bateys are mostly lateral. For a change, here's a story that does not need New York to have a happy ending. And for a story of Dominican Haitian women who love each other, being alive and well at the end is also unprecedented. What we might think of as two primal scenes in the novel, or at least as scenes of subject formation, Miriam having her hair combed by her mother, Micaela being told by her mother that she could not go to school because she had to work in the home and serve breakfast to her brothers before they went to school, illustrate Lada's intersectional vision of subject formation in Ursuline Skirt. It is a vision at once individual and communal, but one that sets the primal as at once gendered, sexualized, and racialized. Let me see your hair. Her mother inspected her scalp, making sure it was washed and clean. She pulled out a comb from some secret recess in her wrap and ran it through Miriam's hair. Miriam tried to pull away from the painful scraping of the comb's teeth against the knots, but alas, her mother had a firm grasp on her, and she could only bite her lip and let the tears run away from her. Etienne, pass me the oil. A pair of legs passed by and deposited a bottle of oil into her mother's hands. Her mother poured some carefully and rubbed it furiously over Miriam's head, and then through her hair before she began to braid it. Another pair of legs passed by, transferring the bottle onto another girl who then brought it to her mother. Miriam watched the women braid each other's hair. Here's a little section about Micaela. Menchie, stop being lazy. Butter the bread for your brothers. Hurry, they can't be late for school. Micaela pouted and pulled out the thread and spread the butter across the dry buns. She passed the finger over the butter can, trying to feel the letters written in red. Mama, when can I go to school? Mama Husan turned around, her eyes flashing as she balanced a jarro of hot coffee and several cups in her hand. Girls don't go to school. You have enough to do in the house. Or is it that you need for work? Although both of these scenes become crucial to how the young women imagine themselves and their potentialities as human beings, they are coupled with other scenes where both girls learn from their fathers about who they are as well, and these exchanges are remarkable for the way they insert these young women in the history of the African diaspora. Miriam, learn this now, says her father, when you're still young. You were born in this country, but you are Haitian. You will always be Haitian. Our people are treated poorly because we are free. We know when something is wrong. Menchie, says Micaela's father, your people come from Africa. They come to tell you the story of how you arrived and how we have survived. Your mother's families were cimarrones. They resisted the Spanish laborers who ran batallas when they grew sugarcane. Your mother's people fled. They came to the mountains before their feet could be cut off. Your mother's people are my people too. We are free, but we do not yet understand that freedom. A final feature of this novel worth highlighting is Lada's understanding of the human body as staging ground for the distribution and redistribution of energies. The novel insistently returns to the notion of possession, as in religious possession or ritual possession, to thematize the cohabitation of the divine in the banal. Through an engagement with diasporic religious traditions, and to encourage us to think of the body not just as the repository that coagulates into an individual self in the Western self, but as the staging ground of struggle, love, and connectivity. It is telling that one key scene of love making among the women takes place after a ritual where Miriam had been possessed by Shango. Out of the trance, Miriam fell back exhausted into the bed of arms awaiting her return, Lada tells us. Oya breathed fire into their whispers. Come, mommy, come. They wrapped their bodies together, the scent of river and fire permeating the air. Anaisa and Chango loved each other. Together they formed the rain that meets the earth. Anaisa, a mirror of Chango's thunderous sound, the brilliant white paths of lighting, like the veins of sweet water in the forest. Anaisa fed Chango's thirsty skin with water, watched as Chango split open, pouring rain in the rosy lights of dawn. Oya, Chango's dearest lover, blew in through the loose boards surrounding them. Micaela and Miriam trembled. They lay holding each other as morning walked through the door to greet them. If this picture of a love that can be spoken without identity disorients, it achieves this by turning away from our expectations about identity, sexual identity, race, subject formation, and immigration. Ursule's skirt, as a theoretical and aesthetic intervention, pushes us to think differently about the Haitian-related question. What if the metaphors are not the fighting cocks of Michelle Booker, but the loving and tough working through of a Doña Miriam and Doña Micaela, one that is cognizant, but that does not make Dominican racism and anti-Haitianism the only prison to look at these realities. Lada's proposal, Lada's theory and provocation is for us to think love, selfhood, and belonging as struggle, with new maps that do not always require the intervention of the more enlightened North to find dignity, respect, and why not, a small measure of progress. Thank you.